Hello everybody and welcome to Holy Nerdvana. I'm here today in my kitchen. This is not Jensen's kitchen. I'm also not going to show you the rest of the place. But I'm here today with the Sapphire RX 6700 Pulse Edition. This is the, as you can see, 10GB card. So it's the non-XT. Performance will be a bit lower, but of course it's also going to be higher than the 8GB 6650 XT. The important thing about the RX 6700 is that it lands at a price point of just around $350. Prices and availability do vary. We have seen them come down quite a bit since the cards first appeared several months back. But this price is roughly the same as an RTX 3060, or it lands between the 6650 and the 6700 XT, and it also goes directly against Intel's Arc A770, and you don't have to deal with Intel's drivers, which is certainly worth a lot to someone. Alright, let's go ahead and look at the card itself. Surprise! It's already unboxed. There's really nothing much to show here. Your usual two fans, triple DisplayPort, and a single HDMI. Nothing too much to note on the back other than the Radeon and Pulse branding. It's a typical 2-slot design. Power is not super high. We'll get to that later. And let's go ahead and hit the benchmarks. For our performance benchmarks, we have run 15 different games, including a mix of DirectX 12, DirectX 11, DirectX Ray Tracing, and even one Vulkan API game. Overall performance, as expected, lands right between the 6700 XT and the 6650 XT, perhaps a little bit closer to the 6650, but that's to be expected considering that their compute is similar while their memory bandwidth favors the 10GB 6700 card. Also notice that at 1080p medium, performance comes in below the RTX 3060 Ti, but well ahead of the RTX 3060. It also ranks ahead of the Arc A770 16GB card. As we move up to 1080p Ultra, that changes with the Intel card taking a very slight lead, but performance overall is still looking good for the 6700 10GB. We also tested at 1440p Ultra, and you can see here that it's going to struggle in some games based on these performance figures, especially in things that use DirectX Ray Tracing, but we'll get to those game results in a moment. And last, and perhaps least, or at least most in terms of resolution, we have the 4K Ultra results, where performance is going to struggle a lot. There are some games that are playable at 4K Ultra, but there are also others that will drop well below 30 FPS. We are going to focus on the 1080p Ultra performance results for the individual game charts, just because that's the best place for this card in our opinion. Starting with Bright Memory Infinite benchmark, it's extremely demanding and uses a lot of ray tracing effects, and you can see that performance plummets to just 25 FPS. Borderlands 3, meanwhile, cranks the knob up to over 100 FPS, and performance from the RX 6700 10GB actually lands ahead of the RTX 3060 here. Control Ultimate Edition goes back the other way. Performance is still playable at 43 FPS, but it comes in just below the RTX 3060 and quite a bit behind the Arc A750. Cyberpunk 2077 happens to be one of the most demanding games in our test suite, and again you can see that the RX 6700 does not fare well, coming in just a hair ahead of the RTX 3050 and well behind other cards. Far Cry 6, meanwhile, easily clears the 120 FPS mark and comes in just ahead of the 3060 Ti, mostly thanks to having much better 1% minimum frame rates. Flight Simulator, this is a DirectX 11 game, though it does have beta DirectX 12 support. We are not using it simply because performance right now has been slower. That may improve in the near future, but here you see that the RTX 3060 actually does beat the 6700 10GB for a change. Fortnite using DirectX ray tracing also favors some of Nvidia's cards, but here AMD's architecture seems to do better than in other ray tracing games, and we have to give credit to Epic for whatever they have done with the engine that seems to help AMD's cards more than in some of the fully Nvidia promoted engines. Forza Horizon 5 does support ray tracing, and it's also recently added FSR 2.2 and DLSS support, but we do not test with those, and we feel like there's some problems with the settings we used, or at least maybe the patch didn't get applied that enables ray tracing, so we're going to have to come back and revisit this one. For now, you can see that performance was quite good at nearly 100 FPS, but we expect it will drop once we get ray tracing working properly. Horizon Zero Dawn is a slightly older game, and as such it's no surprise to see it pulling over 120 FPS on the 6700 10GB. Metro Exodus Enhanced Edition has more ray tracing effects than the original and thus pushes performance down, but the AMD cards still fare okay, with the 6700 10GB beating the 3060 while trailing the 3060 Ti. Minecraft, meanwhile, with all of the ray tracing effects enabled and at a maximum render distance of 24 chunks, definitely pushes the AMD cards hard, and you can see that the 10GB 6700 does manage 30 FPS, but comes in just below the RTX 3050. Also note that Intel's Arc GPUs are not yet supported by Minecraft ray tracing, so we will revisit these in the future. Red Dead Redemption 2, our sole Vulkan API game, shows standings once again about what we would expect, with the 3060 Ti coming in ahead of the 6700 10GB, which in turn just passes the Arc A750. Total War Warhammer 3. This is an interesting one, as previous drivers definitely favored Nvidia's cards, but AMD's latest drivers seem to have done a lot for performance, and now we see things landing more or less where we would expect. And our last game is Watch Dogs Legion, where the RX 6700 10GB once again surpasses the 3060 Ti. That's because we haven't enabled the ray traced reflections, as we felt we didn't need yet another ray tracing game. Overall then, the Sapphire RX 6700 Pulse 10GB edition is a quite lovely card. It's not the fastest card out there, but it does have a reasonable price, and it's readily available at places like Amazon and Newegg. Is it worth buying? That's a little bit harder to say. We've got the new RDNA 3 coming soon, and RTX 40 series are already here, but those are very high-end offerings right now. We expect them to push into the mainstream segment and prices below $400 sometime in the first half of next year. At that point, the 6700 10GB will have a lot more competition, but for the time being it looks fairly decent. We give it a score of 80 out of 100, and it would have scored higher had it been available closer to the launch of last year's RX 6700 XT. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe and share with your friends, as this is our first video review and we're hoping to grow our channel and perhaps gain some independence from the manufacturers. Tune in next time, where we will be looking at, I don't know, perhaps an RTX 4080.